Date with a Debut is a Words and Nerds and Breathe Art podcasts co-production recorded on a Wagbical country. And I pay my respects to all elders, past and present, and extend that to any First Nations people tuning in. Always was, always will be, Aboriginal land. On with the show.
I wanted it to very much be a love letter to Muslim families, to Muslim girls who love their family and their faith. And that's not the problem. The problem is other stuff. No, I'm going to do a story for the Muslim girl where she's already in a good place and she draws from her faith and her family.
Welcome to Date with a Debut, a podcast about debut authors, their incredible books, and their journey to publication. If you are looking for a new author to discover or writing inspiration for your own story and you don't know where to start, this is the place to be. I'm Nick Wasiliev, author of When Men Cry and your host for today's show, and I'm delighted to welcome another debut author in today's episode. If you enjoy the show, or indeed any other shows on the Words and Nerds platform, jump online and give us a thumbs up, a 5-star review, wherever you are listening. Thank you for listening to us and for supporting the Australian book industry. You can also find any books mentioned in today's podcast down in the description. Today, I'm joined by Raidah Shah Idil, who has achieved, among many things, a degree in psychology and a diploma of counselling from the Australian Institute of Professional Counsellors. After growing up in Sydney, studying in Jordan, and now residing in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, Raidah is a Bazira Education Certified Instructor. Her writing has been published in SBS Voices, Lunch Ticket, The Feminist Wire, Daily Life, Lip Mag, and The Elephant Journal. However, we're here today to talk about her debut middle grade fiction, How to Free a Jinn, published by Allen and Unwin Kids, which you can get a copy of right now down in the description. We will discuss mild spoilers, so I recommend you grab a copy now, or at least very soon. I started off by asking Raidah about her incredible career trajectory and where the world of writing and books fitted into that, and also the idea of putting together a fantasy world based on the realm of Islamic-inspired spirituality and mythology. Raidah, welcome to Date with a Debut.
Thank you, Nick. Good to be here.
First of all, I just want to shout out, we were just literally just talking about it 1 second ago, but how insane your career has been. Growing up in Sydney, you studied in Jordan, you've lived all around the world, you are now living in Kuala Lumpur in KL with your family, 3 kids, you have a degree in psychology, you've got a diploma in counselling. And despite this podcast obviously being about your debut, you've also written a hell of a lot as well. You've written all over the place. So I just want to kind of start off by asking, firstly, I respect the hustle. And then second of all, where does writing fit into Raidah the person? Because I just love that it sticks out in your achievements.
I mean, writing has been the thread throughout my life that's helped me make sense of things, process things, cope with things, So it has been my mom said that I learned to read really fast. I was 3 or something, ridiculously young. So I was hyperlexic, I think that's the word, or hyperverbal. I can't remember the term now. So I've always had reading and writing as a coping mechanism in many ways. And as much as I loved reading, though, I didn't really, till much later in life, I didn't see any characters who were like me. I would see unicorns, elves, fairies, or demigods, every kind of combination under the sun. But seeing a Muslim Malay hijabi girl was really difficult. Especially, I guess, in the Australian literary space. So coming to Malaysia and living here and finally feeling completely and utterly normal has been the best thing for my creativity, because I'm no longer creating under siege. A lot of my SBS Voices articles, for example, is about that minority experience, and really heavy stuff. But I wanted to write a story that was fun and adventurous, where the issue wasn't about being Muslim, it wasn't about wearing hijab, it wasn't, struggling with Islamophobia. It was just a Muslim kid having amazing adventures, and while also having a lot of complicated family dynamics, having anxiety, being born into a lot of complex situations, and her ultimately choosing what speaks to her and her family and her faith. Yeah.
I'm so glad to hear that being in Malaysia has kind of galvanized a lot of this stuff, and this actually leads on to kind of another thing I wanted to ask you about before we dive into How to Free a Jinn explicitly, because again, we were kind of talking about it beforehand, but YA in middle grade is rapidly becoming one of my favorite activities to talk about on this podcast. It's one of those genres that feels like a trendsetter in its creativity and its ideas and its spirit of discovery. And you kind of alluded to it a little bit earlier. Many fantasy books and books within this genre, but I mean, in the Australian context, definitely draw on a lot of existing mythology and existing fantasy. But I mean, for me growing up, I never really got the chance to see any books that actually highlighted Islamic spirituality and Islamic culture and have that perspective on Islam, which from my headspace, because like I always find that spirituality discussion so fascinating, I would have loved to have had something like that. And I love, first and foremost, that this book is one that dives into that, creates a fantasy world within that is drawn from that existing space, but also it's not only just that, it captures the culture and the environment of Malaysia and the context of that lens of Malaysia. There is Malay language in this book. There is the culture and the environment, and also the lingo on the ground is used throughout the book. It's there, it's present, and it is integral to this particular world that you have created. Tell me a little bit about pulling from those particular spaces and what that was like for you creatively.
Well, at the time when I first drafted this book, I was already pregnant with my third baby. I had 2 little girls under the age of 4. And I told myself, Raidah, this is your last chance, because you know what's going to happen once, baby number 3 arrives. And I'd always wanted to write a novel. I had 5 unfinished manuscripts across genres, and and Hannah Al-Kaf, the Malaysian icon, she's a brilliant writer. She told me, Raidah, finish your book. You need to finish it, and then you can actually do something with it. And I was like, okay, obviously she knows what she's talking about, clearly. So I'm going to listen to the queen herself. And she was right. So I made sure that I drafted this book. And while I was drafting it, this is pre-COVID, this is before the lockdown. So I was having the best time going from restaurant to restaurant, eating all the tasty Malaysian food, drafting. And I really channeled that just happiness and ease. I could, I was perfectly safe being who I was, pregnant, going to cafes, restaurants, eating, writing about my faith, my culture in this adventure setting. And it felt that pregnancy is an interesting time of creativity for me. I have really vivid dreams. And Inshira came to me fully formed. And at the time, though, she was 16 originally. But the adventure is still pretty much the same. I didn't realize at the time, but I had written a young adult novel with a middle grade voice, which is apparently really challenging to do. I'm like, okay, interesting. And it was a beta reader from the States who's like, Inshira sounds a lot more like she's 12. And first I was like, is it because the young adult expectation in the US, because my agent is in the US, it has to be this romantasy. There has to be this romantic arc. And I'm like, the only love in my book is family love of faith. There's no romance happening, right? So I realized, you know what? This actually does feel like a more middle grade novel. And I wanted it to very much be a love letter to Muslim families, to Muslim girls who love their family and their faith. And that's not the problem. The problem is other stuff, being galvanized by the things that we hold dear. Because I was tired of that trope of the Muslim girl by the end of the book is liberated by her white saviors. And it's nah, man, forget that. No, I'm going to do a story for the Muslim girl where she's already in a good place, but she's got struggles and she draws from her faith and her family, and then chooses like what is pleasing to her creator, because that's a spiritual path. Because I had never seen that in a book. So Hannah Al-Kaf came really close because she wrote about an unapologetically like Malay character, very Malaysian. And the thing is, even though I am Malay and I'm living here now, my ancestors have been here for generations. Like, I'm not Malaysian because I'm Australian, and Malaysia doesn't allow dual citizenship. So it's like, wow, once again, I'm still in between worlds. So I'm like, okay, why don't I write a character about that? Someone who's like straddled both worlds, both countries, and this seen and unseen realm. So I guess you could say there was definitely an element of self-insertion for sure, but no, I have not entered the unseen realm, in case you're wondering. So it was just a fun adventure, because I grew up not hearing ghost stories. It was more like Jinn stories. Like, and in Malaysia, it's just so funny how I interviewed quite a few people, and they had all these supernatural happenings, and I'm like, it's just normal. It's just so common here. I'm like, wow, what is this about this country? I love it. Okay, let me write about it.
It's an environment, and first of all, I love that we have a smashing of tropes. This is a trope smasher, and I like me some trope smashers, or taking of stuff that you've seen before and either inverting it or messing with the formula. That's what creativity and creative books are supposed to do, and this setting is amazing. It is fantastic. Without further ado, let us dive into this beautiful book, which, if anyone is on YouTube, I am holding it to the camera. It is, first of all, shout out the cover, which is absolutely gorgeous. We'll probably get to that in a bit. But we start the podcast with a 1-minute pitch. Tell us, what is How to Free a Jinn about?
Okay, so How to Free a Jinn is about the adventures of Inshira. She's a 12-year-old girl with anxiety, and she was born in Malaysia but moved to Sydney under very mysterious circumstances with her mom. Her dad died really young, so it's just been her mom and her for the longest time. And then when they found out that her grandma, Nenek, had a bad fall in Malaysia, they decide to move back to look after her, keep her company. Now, Inshira is not happy because she has a routine, she has her safe space. She did not imagine ever living in Malaysia. Yeah, sure, she'd visit once a year, but not live there, right? And the minute she moves to Malaysia, all these creepy supernatural things start happening. And then she discovers this family secret that the women in her family can see, inherit, and control jinn, like very powerful supernatural beings that are invisible unless they choose to reveal themselves. And she's faced with this moral dilemma, like, what does she do? Does she keep him? Because it could be handy having an invisible helper who can do anything you want, especially when you're an anxious kid, right? Or does she choose the moral, ethical, Islamic thing to do, which is to let him go? So that's in a nutshell.
Nailed it. Love it.
Thank you.
Excellent summary. There are, and truth be told, with this that has come off that, there are so many, I don't want to say like juicy themes to this book. There's so much to digest and pick apart. The notions of family first. Inshira has, moving back to Malaysia because, and then they had a fall. There is a responsibility element and a subtext kind of placed on both her and her mother there. As well, Sarah. But then you have this other dichotomy of this other world, and which I think also just highlights her power and also women's power, because her nana has actually told her and introduced her to this world, that her family, the women, only the women in Inshira's family can control these powerful spirits, these jinn. And I mean, you alluded to it as well, that there was kind of an element of autobiographical nature to it, but I want to highlight that dichotomy that between the seen and the unseen worlds for Inshira, because what was so great about it was, despite it being a fantasy setting with this book, it felt very grounded. It felt very believable, because not just because of the basis for a lot of this stuff. Like, you hear it in a lot of these spirits and discussions of spirits. whenever you travel to Malaysia,
Mm-hmm.
no matter where you are, in whatever part of Malaysia you are, like that is a key part of daily life. But
It
also,
is.
it is reinforced by the fact that, Shira, for someone so young, she is facing a lot of very hard, difficult challenges and a lot of change and a lot of
Mm-hmm.
issues. So it all fits, it fits within that space. First of all, tell me about the world of Jinn, particularly within the context of Malaysia, for those people who probably aren't familiar with how invaluable it is to daily life.
Okay, so despite the fact that currently Malaysia is currently a Muslim majority country, many generations ago, before Islam arrived to these tropical shores, it was very common for there to be more Hindu belief, more Buddhist belief, and it was just part of daily life, just interacting with spirits, interacting with jungle spirits, making contracts with them. Like every family has some kind of story about, oh yeah, back in the day, my great grandma, to protect the village and the family and to help with the livestock, to help with fishing. So when Islam came, it was like, okay, time to stop because things can go terribly wrong. Instead of putting your trust in fickle spirits, put your trust in Allah and God, and hopefully things will work out. But human beings are messy, right? We always know the right thing to do, the rules, but do we follow them all the time? No. So a lot of things that are still inherited and carried on and do impact on families still today. So it's an interesting interplay between like the Jinn realm and those kind of disturbances and mental health as well. So when I was in Jordan studying Islamic sciences, one of my teachers, she was also like my roommate slash like tenant landlady, super nice. She told me that she studied in Malaysia and there were always like black magic stories all the time. And her family and her were like really freaked out. I was like, what? Until they realized, wait a minute, this is just part of like the folklore in this region. Like nobody was necessarily out to get them. It was just a kind of a ritual of connection. Because like swapping stories, kind of over the campfire, except there's no campfire here. It's just too hot. That kind of thing is just over like teh tarik or roti canai, over like tea and food, right?
I can't imagine. I cannot imagine a campfire
No
especially
campfire
in like
noise.
tropical height of summer Malaysia.
No,
That would
exactly.
just the idea.
No, exactly. You just like preemptively sweat, right? So I realized then that wow, there's just so much material to draw from, and there were, like I mentioned, women I spoke to who did have supernatural experiences, and I interviewed them, right? And I wove, I obviously changed names and things like that into like the fabric of my book. So like it was fascinating to me. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that introducing that world, we've got in Intira, who is the perfect vessel to kind of highlight that, because she's someone as well. You, as a character, you immediately want to barrack for, because someone so young, she's coming in again. As I mentioned, she's coming into this with a lot of changes, new school, new country. Tell me a little bit about her, but also specifically her connection with Ari, this Jinn
Yes.
who attaches himself to her and also warns her about the dangers of the school.
Yeah. So Inshira, she's 12. It's a tricky time being 12, let alone when you're already anxious, let alone like moving to a new country, new school, and living with your grandma, whom you adore, but your grandma also really fights a lot with your mom. It's kind of stressful. She's like, fine, let's go to school, stop fighting, And when she's at school, she feels like something is strange about this setting, like, not just everyday anxiety about moving to a new school, but something creepy, supernatural. And that's where she sees this little boy in the music room that's claimed to be haunted by the other kids in her school. But she's the only one who can see him, and her new friends are like, okay, what are you doing? Who are you talking to? We can't see anyone. So I wanted to introduce like a playful spirit, right? Someone who was a kind of like, in between. So he's, he's morally ambiguous. It's the one way to put it. But he likes to present he likes to present himself as a little boy because, he likes bothering kids. And when he sees Inshira and she sees him, he's like delighted. He's like, finally, someone can see me. It's like her first day of school, right? And she's like, what is happening right now?
I didn't need this. There's already enough change.
Absolutely, right? And then of course, like, she's very close to her mom. It's just been the two of them for as long as she can remember. So when she goes back and she, at school pickup, it's like, oh, something interesting happened, and her mom's like, what happened? And that's the whole interplay about how her mom didn't want to raise her in Malaysia, specifically because she was afraid of this connection with the unseen realm, and she didn't want her daughter to get hurt or worse. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So that tension.
It does. It is a huge tension. And I mean, the first instant reaction, of course, is that Inshira is also, she's got a few friends in school. The actual characters in the school, I mean, is Nadia and Kaijin, yes. Who she befriends and kind of has to come to terms and try to figure out their way through understanding when with this weird Jinn, strange character who she can see but they cannot. And then, of course, these characters all become very important to one another when this evil spirit emerges, that is trying to force Inshira, emerging at the school and trying to get her to leave Malaysia. And I also just want to quietly shout out one of the teachers, Sensei, who... Yes,
Sensei Bilqis, yeah.
Yes, no spoilers. She has a secret or two of her own. We'll keep that one spoiler-free.
Yeah, she's one of the good guys.
Yes, she is. She is a good guy. But tell me about creating this school environment on the page with these particular characters and then, out of nowhere, throwing spirits on top of it.
Well, that was a fun one. And this was inspired by a real-life story, because while I was drafting my book and just interviewing, like, Malaysians, was my friend's daughter. She told me that there was a school that was literally built, like, on top of, like, an unmarked, like, mass grave, and all these creepy things were happening. So I was like, okay, this is really creepy, and let me put that in my book and see how I can work with it, right? Like, what do you do as you do, right?
You always do.
I know, content. So that was one, like, real life inspiration. And then because it's already hard enough adjusting to a new school. Like, I was 12 when I moved from Singapore to Sydney, and it was a very pivotal age. It was, like, shockingly different and stressful, and I was already so socially awkward. So I hid in the school library, right, and devoured fantasy books to cope, as you do, right? So I wanted to, like, catch that age of, like, 12. Things are changing, and then now you have something scary externally. But at the same time, like, I wanted Inshira to learn to trust herself, that she has what it takes, not in isolation, but to reach out to her safe people, to reach out to, like, the strength of her faith and spirituality, and how she doesn't have to, like, shoulder this alone. Because I do notice a lot of the time when a lot of middle grade novels, like, this is the parents are, like, dead or, like, missing or, like, hostile.
Yes.
Or, like, they're in an orphanage of some sort. And I'm like, let me turn that around. Like, let this be, like, a supportive, loving family. Messy, yes. Complicated, yes. But always there to, like, to back her up. Because that's been my experience as well for my family. And I wanted to see that, like, on page.
You've alluded to it a few times in the podcast, in this discussion so far. But this kind of the last key dynamic of the family side is kind of also what I want to talk about, because you, as alluded to, you've got Inshira's Nene, who serves as the gateway to this world. But I also found myself, maybe it's at the age I am now, being, kind of at that age when you start thinking about having children, or being, or you are having children. I was very drawn to Sarah, to her mother, probably because of these secrets, as you allude to. She, that led Sarah to take Inshira to Sydney and be away from all of that. And the actual dynamic, it is messy between these three family members and also three different generations. The way they speak to one another and the way that there is expectations set on one another as well. It was messy, but also so fascinating, because, of course, behind all of that was a very deep love that was clearly there, and a desire for everyone to want the best for one another. I don't know why. I found myself being drawn to Sarah, maybe because of her reasoning and her circumstance. But of course,
Yeah.
when Insira dives headlong back into this world that her
Yes.
that her her nana has opened the gate to, you can't, there's not a lot you can do about that. And of course, there's a mild spoiler. Insira has to make a big decision at the end of this podcast, at the end of this book as well, which does have a considerable impact on the events of the book.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Sarah was a really easy character to write, because like, what would I be feeling if Inshira were my daughter? Right? Because I have 2 girls and a son. Thankfully, no supernatural things have happened as
of
yet,
yet.
and I hope it stays that way. But were I to be challenged with this, I would probably do the same thing. Okay, let's get out of here. It's not worth it. It's too complicated. Let's just subtract that from the whole equation. Because as a parent, like, you want to keep your children safe. It's just like wired into us. But then again, it's that call of looking after family and that, love and responsibility that draws you back anyway. So it's like,
absolutely.
you can't escape it. So instead of running away, then Sarah, she has her own character arc and her own growth throughout the book, realizing that her daughter's growing up and she's making her own choices, and she needs to be able to just let go a little bit to let her daughter make the choices that she needs to. But it's terrifying.
Yeah.
It's like, what do you do? Because you literally see like your kid could literally be in danger, but you can't force them to make choices. They have to own it themselves. All you can do is just be there for them, and try to hope and pray they make the right choice, and don't tell them I told you so.
Like, they've got to make the same mistakes you made as part of the growing up process. As much as you cross your fingers and hope for the best as a parent when you're looking after them and growing them up, eventually they have to go out on their own. Which is absolutely terrifying, and the prospect of that is terrifying. And I do not blame Sarah for reacting the way that she has, but also it just how she responded to this extraordinary circumstance that she finds her daughter in. And as alluded to, there are so many great stories and elements and tropes within this book. It is the story of a family coming together. There is tropes of coming of age, creating your own path, family, acceptance in oneself. But I also love how through this story and through this lens, you turn them on their head a little with the setting, with the place, with the people, and smash preconceptions about it. And I always like to ask an author, what did writing this book teach you?
It taught me to take up space. Like, it taught me that it's safe now for me in Malaysia to take up space, to be who I am, to be Muslim, to be wearing hijab, to love my family and my faith while also having like complicated family dynamics. It taught me that it's okay to write characters like me, also being like neurodivergent. I didn't realize I had anxiety or I had ADHD till much later on in life, because I thought everybody had the kind of worries I did, and evidently not. Like, wow, really? That must be nice. So I'm like, let me just write that in so that if there is another 12-year-old anxious, little girl out there, she can pick up my book and feel less alone. Because that's what books were like for me. They were like this, but the books were more like, they were very rarely mirrors. They were always doorways to other worlds, and I would see bits of myself reflected in them. But mirrors were much harder to find. So I hope that, my book is something that has taught me to take up space. And I'm hoping it'll help other readers also take up space, those who are like me and those who are not like me, to look at a different world through a different lens, not in a sort of apologetic, explainy, preachy, boring kind of way, but in like a totally like immersive, like Studio Ghibli kind of way, like where you're dropped into this fantastical world. You're like, whoa, where am I?
Yeah. Oh, that is a fantastic lesson. That's probably one of the best answers I've ever had to that question ever. Like, such a good life-affirming lesson to pick up from writing a story. And I'm so glad that taught you that this experience
Yeah.
taught you that makes me really, really happy.
Oh, thank you. And I
Mm.
do hope to keep writing more books, and to set them not only in Malaysia but potentially Sydney as well, because I did like spend a fair chunk of my life there. But it will be a different story, right? Because it's a
Ooh.
different setting, a different place. I know,
Oh,
you know.
exciting.
So wait and see. Yeah.
I want to ask you a little bit about the book getting published, if I can, because
Yeah.
obviously you'd written in several places, and I'm of course not surprised that Alan and Unwin jumped on this book because it is so engrossing, and it's also different, and it's also playing with tropes, but also throwing some crap out the window that needs to be thrown out the
Yeah.
window. But out of curiosity, what was the key thing I ask within this process, because I always love the process of books coming together. What was the
Yeah.
education process like for the publisher? Say things like introducing them to the Malaysian way of thinking, this particular culture, this world, this spirituality, and incorporating
Yeah.
that into the process of, we've got to actually edit this thing and we've got to make it cohesive and work.
Yeah. So I'll answer that question first, and then we can go back to my path to publication, because that was a long one.
Oh, yes.
So my editorial team, they were brilliant. Like my editors, like Jody and Kate, they were absolutely brilliant. They saw my book and they fell in love with it, and they did not want me to like dilute anything at all. They just told me just keep leaning in, like, and the one piece of feedback though was like it was a little bit too scary. So the version that you are reading now, I know, because the version you're reading now is like it's still like, creepy and supernatural, but there was one particular scene that was like, okay, this might give a kid a nightmare, so you might want to like soft focus a bit. So I'm like, okay, I can see where you're coming from, but being able to like write something on page where it was this beautiful celebration of like Malaysian food and culture and like, prayer and hijab, and it was just so amazing, and like they loved it, and that was so all the things that the little like self-doubty part of my brain was like, who's ever gonna want to buy a book like this, that was totally like shut down when Alan Unwin snapped it up, and it was just so healing. And a few people have asked me, was publishing this book traumatizing? I'm like, no, that was like the best part, like finally landing a book deal. But the getting to that point, which will answer the second part of your question, that took a long while. That took a good long while. So I mentioned earlier that I drafted this book while I was pregnant. And and then when my baby arrived, it was like, hey, time to rest for a while. Then I started querying for literary agents. So do not recommend having 3 young children and trying to query for literary for the very first time. It was intense. But I did. So at one point I had like maybe 14 or 10 US and UK agents like reading my full manuscript, but only one of them was brave enough to offer to represent me. And that's my current agent, Alison Helliges of Stamola Literary. And it's the same agency that launched the Hunger Games, right? So she's brilliant, and she loved my book so much. She's like, I'm going to try my best to sell this. So 2020 to 2021, she pitched it to US editors first. And the feedback was interesting. It was like, we really love it. The characters, like the dynamics, the faith, the culture, but we don't know how to get it past acquisitions, because it's a really tough decision in the US space to decide to take on a book, right? Because it's all about like, can it sell? How do we market this and this and that? And because I'm a debut author, and Hannah Al-Kaf was really probably the most famous in the kidlit space for a Malaysian author to get her books published by Salam Read. So that was like my dream imprint, right? But she's Malaysian. Her books were very Malay-centric, but not so much faith-centric, not as much as mine. So she kind of pushed the gate open, and I tried to push it further. So I'm like, okay, no bites so far. Lots of very complimentary rejections. And this is for the young adult version of my book, because I wrote it and she was 16. Then I realized that, I think there's an expectation that when you write young adult fantasy, there's going to be a romance arc, like with like the massive spike in romanticism. I'm like, there ain't no romance in my book, not in that sense, right?
Nah.
Then yeah, absolutely. And it would have been a very different book if that were the case. Like, no, this is not the book I wanted to write. So a beta reader was sort of told me maybe she's more 12. And I'm like, you know what? That makes sense. Maybe that is the missing piece. I just age it down, cut down some other subplots. I had so many things happening, And my agent's like, you know what? That's a great idea. Let's try age it down to middle grade. So 2021, 2022, that was aging it down to middle grade, right? And finally, of course, and COVID and raising my kids and like all the real life stuff that kind of gets in the way. And finally, in 2023, one of her Australian agent friends told her, why don't you pitch to Australia first? Because the US market is kind of challenging right now, right? And I'm like, that is a great idea. Why didn't we do this earlier? Never mind. That's okay. And then Alan and Unwin was like one of the top ones that my agent pitched to. And literally, Nick, it took like 2 weeks for them to get back to us. And they were like, we want this book. And I'm like, yay.
Yeah, when they want it, they want it. It's I think going the Australian route, because obviously there's the two sides of the literary world. There's usually the US and the UK side, and Australia has always kind of fallen in that middle space between both, leaning towards one or the other. So nailed it to land in Australia.
And interestingly, it was my Australian book deal that then caught the eye of my US editor. And my agent's like, well. Oh,
so
that's right. But I mean, that is the nature of publishing right now, where it's so competitive. Editors are so backlogged with so many books that I literally needed a book deal to get another book deal.
That literally is how it is. That
is how
true.
it is. Yeah. So I did get in the end my Australian book deal and my US book deal, and the US version of my book will come out to the US, Canada, and UK September next year. So
wow.
So that's going to be interesting. So it's pretty much, it's still the same content, but my US editor wants to do a little bit of like line edits with me to try to lean in even more to like the spirituality aspect, because Diba, my US editor, she's also Muslim, so it's so exciting.
Love it.
Yeah, I'm like, this is awesome.
Yes. That was my because often like that, those particular they would often ask you to tone sort of stuff down. So to have an editor that's like, no, more. I love that. That's fantastic.
Absolutely. So that will take my book to the next level. So stay tuned a year from now for the US version of my book. I'd love to hear what you think about that one. We'll wait and see.
Yeah, I'll be curious to see it. And on that, here's a key question, because you had alluded that you have some more stories and ideas. What is next? Will there be another? Will we see another world full of jinns coming down the pipeline in a book, or have you got other stories you want to mention or tell?
So because it took quite a while for me to land my Australian US book deal, I literally wrote like an adult rom-com in between just to take a break from all things supernatural.
Awesome.
So that is actually the next book in line. It's got like gangsters, celebrities, like crazy rich Asian vibes, like very escapist. Like I love fantasy and I love romance. Maybe one day I will write that romantasy for a young adult audience. We'll see. So that was that's the next book that's scheduled to go out by my agent. But in terms of middle grade fantasy, I am actually also drafting a book as well, which Alan and Unwin will have first dibs on because they launched my career. So wait and see. So it's not quite a book 2 in this series. I would love a book 2, but again, we got to wait and see and if that's a possibility. But it's another kind of different take on similar themes. And this time I wanted to write like from a boy main character, a 12-year-old boy instead, because I've written for the girls, and like seeing the massively happy response from little boys, like, oh wow, that's adorable. Okay, I'll write one for the boys now. Girls have their turn. Now I'll write for the little boys. Because they were really getting into it, and I was like, wow, this is really nice, because it's this stereotype, the boys don't like to read, they want to play Roblox or Minecraft all day. But when I was doing my author events, like they were all equally into it. So it was like really, really, really validating to see. I'm like, yes, let's encourage the next generation of readers.
That makes me so bloody happy to hear that the younger generation of boys seems into it, because like the majority of readers are, in my experience of people listening to this podcast, a vast majority are women. So to hear that the boys are getting into it, come on, let's do it.
Absolutely. Yeah. So they will come up with their own like Jinn stories. Like, well, that's awesome, So I think it was just really good for them to see that someone who looks like them could get published. So this is saying, right? Like kids cannot be what they cannot see or something. I might be misquoting that, but just getting them like being able to come on stage and like, like showing the kids like you can look like me and you can write about characters who look like us and you can get published. Just don't give up and keep trying. Yeah. So that was like probably one of the highlights of my book tour. Yeah.
We'll finish off with, I like to finish off the podcast with a rapid fire question part of the show. So
brace myself.
Yes, I'm going to fling questions at you and you have to give me the first answer that comes to your head. Are you ready?
Yes. Well, no, but I'll try.
Well, I did allow you to prep for 2 questions beforehand, which all of our listeners are very familiar of, which is about your book and reading experiences. And I did something weird, which is I stalked you on Goodreads to see what you have
wow.
So I'm quite excited about what exactly you have either been reading or you're currently reading. And I'm just excited to hear about all of that sort of stuff. So first up, what is your favorite book that you have read in the last 12 months?
That is such a tricky and hard question. I've honestly thought about it. So can I pick one literary book and one more genre book? Is that allowed? Or just one? Okay, yes.
I'm flexible,
Okay, so literary book style, Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabriel Zevin. That was amazing. That book made me cry. Like, I love gaming. Like, that's the untapped part of my life now because I'm just so busy with my kids. But getting to read such a beautiful book that talks about like life, friendship, loss, and video games. Oh, I loved it so much. So that's from the literary side. Now, from the more genre fiction, I'm listening to the audiobook called Fledgling by S.K. Ali. It is incredible. It's like a young adult kind of dystopia type novel. And it's just, I'm still like in the middle of it. It's incredible. And the way S.K. Ali is one of my favorite authors. Like I love all her books. So having her write like a dystopia sci-fi fantasy, it's like, this is amazing. Because all her books so far have been very contemporary, coming of age, which of course I love. But with fantasy, it's amazing.
And there would be something else. Yeah, there would be something else as well about it being in the audio setting as well, having someone speak it to you, be an orator.
Yeah, I mean, that is the vast, that's like the most common way I consume books these days anyway, because I spend so much time like writing on my screen or editing, like unless it's like a paperback or a hardback, it's just, I can't look at words on a screen that are like not mine, like I'm just tapped out. But audiobooks are really nice and soothing, and it's like a story, and the production level is out of this world. It's like amazing, right? Yeah, so I love audiobooks. Yeah,
I might have to steal that from you because I often can't read when I'm writing, like because I don't like there to be an overlap. It's just it drives me nuts.
It just crosses wires, right?
Yeah, I might have to steal that from you. I think I'll have to
go for it. Yeah, audiobooks are amazing. Yeah.
What is your favorite debut novel that you have ever read? We're talking ever across your life.
Ever. Okay, this is. I think was Sabriel by Garth Nix. Was that his debut novel?
I think it was.
Because I loved it. Yeah.
Garth Nix is great.
Garth Nix, and exactly, and like I'm like sharing the same publisher as Garth Nix just blows my mind because he's one of my favorite authors. So Sabriel, if that was his like debut,
I'm googling it right now. Yep, it was.
Sabriel, yeah. Yeah.
Oh wow. Yeah, that's a great one. Shout out to Garth. He's beautiful. I got to meet him at the Arbia Awards in 2021, I think it was. And true to form, Like authors are so much fun to hang out with in real life.
Oh,
Like they're the
that's
sweetest
amazing.
people. It is so nice. Like even if they've written like the most brutal, intense story ever, like your Candace
It leaves
Foxes
you
or your Trent
shredded.
Daltons, you meet them in person and they are the loveliest, sweetest, kindest
Oh,
people. And I often like, where the hell did that story come
where
from?
did that come from?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You walk into a room and you suddenly find yourself face to face with a Jinn.
Oh my.
What would you do? Or if it was a Jinn that was in fact like Ari, would you like a Jinn like Ari, or would you have certain prerequisites for your Jinn? What would you do if you had a Jinn suddenly come face to face with you?
Well, I would hope it'd be like a friendly and kind one.
Yes.
And if not, I would run the other way.
That sounds about right.
Yeah, that's right. Safe self-preservation at all costs.
Do you have a favorite word?
Oh, a favorite word. I think it's petrichor. Yeah,
Oh,
petrichor is
that's a
probably my
nice
favorite
word.
word. Yeah, because
Oh,
I mean, living in Malaysia, there's like having lots of rain, like literally being able to smell that it's about to happen is really thrilling. I never get over it. I love the sound of rain. I love like the smell of the earth before rain. Like rain is good. We need more rain. So yeah, I think petrichor
I'm
is my
so glad
favorite word.
I'm from country New South Wales. Rain, I like rain to be like tropes in my books, and it's usually like a cleansing thing. I've noticed like my dog now smells, like she smells the petrichor when it's about to rain. So
Yeah,
she goes outside to smell the petrichor, and I'm like, mate, it's so
you love
good.
the rain.
I
Yeah.
love the rain. There are a lot of really fun Malay phrases. They like to have their phrases in Malaysia. Do you have a favorite Malay phrase?
Do I have a favorite Malay phrase? It's probably gonna be damakan. Like, have you eaten? I used to bug me so much, but I get it now. Like damakan is like it's a love language. It's a way of showing
Mm.
like, are you nurtured? Are you hungry? Can I help you? But it used to really bug me. I'm like, can you not ask me about anything else in my life? Now,
Oh,
mama, I get it. Yeah, damakan. Like, have you eaten?
it is so funny you say that because I have an answer for this one too, which is which we used to sing when we were traveling all around Sabah and around the mountains around Mount Kinabalu,
Oh
which was
wow.
Jalan Jalan Karamakan.
Oh
walk,
yes.
walk, find food. For anyone
That's
who
right,
is
exactly. That's a good one. Jalan-jalan cari
yeah, and we
makan.
would
Yeah,
sing
for
songs
sure.
with it, and it would make all the locals just piss themselves laughing.
Laughing.
Seeing. I heard on the grapevine that you are a fan of ginger tea, noodle soup,
Oh, absolutely.
and dreams of uninterrupted sleep, which
Oh,
with
yes.
3 children, yeah. If you could only have one of those 3, what would it be?
Probably uninterrupted sleep.
Yeah.
It's been a while. I mean, like, it's been a while. My oldest is 9. Thankfully, she can sleep through the night now. My middle daughter, she's about almost 7. My son's 5. I'm like, when will you sleep? So this saying, sleep like a baby, is a lie.
Yes.
It should be chopped out the vocabulary window like forever. So
Sleep
yeah,
like a
one day
log.
I know, right? So
That's what it
one
should
day
be.
I hope to sleep again. But then again, because I'm a night owl, I don't like to sleep early. I like to like where like, everyone else is asleep. I'm like, yes, now I can write, can binge on Netflix, I can have my ginger tea. Chamomile tea, I mean, the no caffeine at night. That's a disaster. So yeah, about
Yes,
one day.
one day. Last question. Are you happy?
Oh, I am. Thank you for asking. I'm tired. I'm like sleep deprived, but I am actually happy. Like this is probably the happiest I've been in like my whole life, because I have like my husband, my kids, like we're all happy and safe. I get to do what I love for a living. I mean, not quite full time yet. We're getting there, but I feel incredibly privileged and happy that it's like my books that are helping to pay off like my ex debt. I mean, that's that's amazing.
Mm.
Yeah.
Ryder
Yeah.
is happy. That is all I need to know.
Yeah, I am. Thank you.
And thank you so much for this wonderful book. The book is called How to Free a Jinn. It is out now at the time of us recording. You should go and buy a copy. It's really, really good. And I'll simply say thank you so much, Raidah. It has been such a privilege having you on the show. You should be really proud of this book. You should be really proud of it.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to today's episode of Date with a Debut. You can buy all books mentioned in today's show down in the description box. And if you enjoyed the show, drop Words and Nerds a review. This will be the final episode of Date with a Debut for 2024. So I would like to say a special thank you to all of the authors who appeared on the show this year and to all of the publishers who helped make that possible. I would also like to wish a special thank you to the incredible Dani V. Date with a Debut will be back in April 2025 for a brand new season. I'll be taking a few months off because I have a manuscript of my own that I'm about to complete. So stay tuned and I will see you in April 2025 for a brand new season of Date with a Debut. Catch you soon.